Hello and welcome to my YouTube. This YouTube is remembering the year 1931. Herbert Hoover was president in 1931, and the stock market crash had occurred 2 years earlier, so we were in the beginning of the Great Depression. Unemployment in America was 14%. Today, it's only 4.3%. 60% of all Americans were living in poverty in 1931. Today, 11% of Americans live below the poverty line. On January 6, Thomas Edison submits his last patent application, and he did die later that year. He was working on this. He was trying to turn goldenrod weed into rubber. January 30th, Charlie Chaplin's comedy film City Lights receives its public premiere at the Los Angeles Theater with Albert Einstein as guest of honor. I have no idea how that came about. Food riots break out in Minneapolis and other parts of the United States that year. February 14th, the original film version of Dracula with Bela Lugosi is released. February 20th, California gets the go-ahead by the Congress to build the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. I was in the Navy, and my ship, the USS Enterprise, was stationed right here at Alameda. And I have crossed this bridge dozens and dozens of times going to San Francisco. On March 1st, the battleship USS Arizona is placed back in full commission after a refit. And of course, at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the USS Arizona was sunk. And here is the Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor. You can see the ship below the water. On March 3rd, the Star-Spangled Banner is officially adopted as the United States national anthem. I was really surprised when I read this. I had no idea that our national anthem was that new. I thought it went back at least into the 1800s. But no, 1931. March 25th, the Scottsboro boys are arrested in Alabama and charged with raping a white woman. This was a sorry episode in American history. These black boys were on a train and they got in a fight with a bunch of white boys and kicked them off the train. And so the white boys went to the sheriff and said, these guys raped a white woman, and they had a girlfriend that told the police that she had been raped. They were charged and found guilty and sentenced to death. That was the penalty for raping a white woman. They were their trial was overturned, and they went back and forth for years and years and years, being retried. Eventually, the white girl confessed that she made the whole thing up. March 31st, an earthquake destroys Managua, Nicaragua, killing 2,000 people. On April 25th, the automobile manufacturer Porsche is founded by Ferdinand Porsche in Stuttgart, Germany. May 1st, construction of the Empire State Building is completed in New York City. On May 7th, siege of the West 91st Street. 18-year-old serial murderer Francis Two Gun Crowley surrenders after a 2-hour gun battle with New York City police. witnessed by 15,000 bystanders. On May 20th, the Lake of the Ozark is completed in the middle of Missouri. I lived in St. Louis for a number of years, and I have been to the Lake of the Ozarks many, many, many times. It's a great recreational area, lots of boating, lots of nice resorts. This lake is 96 miles long. On June 23rd, Wiley Post and Harold Gatty take off from Roosevelt Field, Long Island, in an attempt to accomplish the first round-the-world flight in a single-engine airplane. Between June and November of 1931, the Yangtze and the Huai River flood in populous regions of China, leaving an estimated 422,000 people dead. That's hard to imagine. In July, John Emerson of Cambridge, Massachusetts, perfects the iron lung just in time for the growing polio epidemic in the 1940s. I was born in 1944, and I remember as a young boy growing up seeing all of the March of Dimes posters, and they always had pictures of children in these iron lungs, which helped them breathe. On July 26th, the International Bible Students Association adopts the name Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's when they started. 1931. On August 16th, Texas experienced an earthquake magnitude of 6.5, the most powerful earthquake in its recorded history. You certainly don't think of earthquakes in Texas. On September 18th, the Japanese military stages the Mukden incident, an explosion blamed on Chinese dissidents and used as a pretext for the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. On October 4th, Dick Tracy, the comic strip detective character, created by cartoonist Chester Gould, makes his first appearance in the Detroit Mirror newspaper. October 24th, the George Washington Bridge across the Hudson River is dedicated. At 3,500 feet, it is nearly double the previous record for the longest main span in the world. On December 10th, Jane Addams becomes the first American woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So, who was born in 1931? I know many of you are going to recognize most of these names. Robert Duvall, the very, very fine actor. James Earl Jones, the actor. And if you've heard his voice thousands of times, he's the guy that says, and I quote, "This is CNN." He was also the voice of Darth Vader in the Star Wars movies. The actor James Dean, who unfortunately died at a very young age in a car wreck. The actor Leonard Nimoy, and I chose to picture him as most of us will remember him, as Mr. Spock on Star Trek. The great Willie Mays, Say Hey Willie. The actress, singer, writer, producer, ordained minister, Della Reese. The good-looking Tab Hunter, heartthrob actor. The TV host Regis Philbin. The premier of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. The actor William Shatner, and I have chosen to picture him as most of us will remember him as Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. Larry Hagman, who played JR in the TV series Dallas. Remember Who Shot JR? The great Yankee baseball player Mickey Mantle. The CBS anchor Dan Rather, born in 1931. Ike Turner, Tina Turner's husband. The country western singer Skeeter Davis. So what was introduced back in 1931? Alka-Seltzer came out that year. The electron microscope was invented in 1931. Stop-action photography was first introduced that year. The pinball machine was first introduced back in 1981. Stereophonic sound was first created in 1931. Bisquick was introduced that year. The IBM 601, this was a key punch device. It could read key punched cards and it can do multiplication. So it could read two numbers and multiply them and punch the number onto a punch card. Tampax for women's hygiene. Tootsie Pop came out in 1931. Eaten a few of those in my time. What were the top grossing movies in 1931? In other words, which movies made the most money? The big money makers. Number 1, Frankenstein, starring Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. City Lights, starring Charlie Chaplin. Mata Hari, starring Greta Garbo. Susan Lennox, starring a very young-looking Clark Gable and Greta Garbo. A Free Soul, starring Norma Shear. What were the most popular songs of 1931? Minnie the Moocher by Cab Calloway and his Cotton Club Orchestra. Second, Just a Gigolo by Ted Lewis and his orchestra. Mood Indigo by Duke Ellington. Here's one I recognize. Dream a Little Dream of Me by Wayne King. Out of Nowhere by Bing Crosby. The average annual salary for a man was $1,850. I know that doesn't sound like much, so let's convert that into today's dollars. In our dollars today, that would be $38,463. That's still way below the average. The average salary in America today is around $70,000. So times were definitely tough in 1931. Cost of a new car was $640. In our dollars, that car would have cost $13,675. The cost of a new home was $6,790. In today's dollars, that home would have cost $145,901. A gallon of gas cost 14 cents. Boy, that sounds like a steal. Not quite. In our dollars, that's $2.99. I paid $2.63 about 4 days ago. So, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about the year 1931 and had a little fun. Be well, my friends.